Mimo was a troubled kid who suffered abuse in his own home at the hands of his mother's new boyfriend after his father's death. The poor boy endured daily beatings and received barely any food, cowering in a corner as his horrible mother ignored his cries of pain, absorbed in watching television. As he grew older, Mimo became a lonely, weak child with no confidence. He wakes up from a nightmare of being beaten by his stepfather to the sound of Shu, the class bully, tormenting a kind girl named Aya. Shu snatches her book, mocking her for reading girly novels, unable to grasp that a girl would naturally read such books. Mimo imagines how, in a TV show, he would stand up to the bully and earn everyone's admiration. However, he knows that in reality, no one on the bus cares, and if he stands up for Aya, his weak frame will only get him beaten up. Most popular students support Shu, while the others laugh along to avoid becoming targets themselves. The teacher is useless, asleep, as Shu relentlessly demands Aya's phone number. Before he realizes it, Mimo stands up, looking Shu in the eye, and tells him to leave Aya alone. Shu laughs, calling him a simp and weak, when suddenly Kiri, the most popular guy in class, intervenes and tells Shu to give the book back. Shu obeys, returning the book to Aya before moving on to bully another nerd, Yasu. Mimo questions why he stood up for Aya, an unusual act for him, but before he can dwell on it, everyone on the bus is transported to a different world. They find themselves in a completely unknown place, staring at a beautiful deity standing atop a bridge. She introduces herself as the goddess Visi. Visi explains that whenever the threat of a demon king arises, the kingdom of Alien summons brave warriors from another world to defend their realm. 200 years ago, the demon king nearly destroyed their kingdom. But thanks to some heroes, the Demon King was defeated, and the demon army was annihilated. Unfortunately, the Demon King has resurrected, which is why they have all been teleported to this world, to fight as the new heroes who will put an end to the Demon King. The students are utterly confused, wondering if they are dead or if this is some kind of prank. Their teacher instructs them to stay quiet, and listen to what the goddess has to say. Mimo looks at the ancient architecture, the soldiers wearing armor and holding spears, and the goddess with her golden eyes. He pinches himself to check if he is dreaming. Kiri speaks up and asks the goddess what will happen if they don't cooperate. Visi smiles and claims that she won't be able to send them back to their world. Kiri asks if there really is a way to return, and Visi replies that there is a reverse summoning ritual which can send them back. However, to perform it, they must kill the Demon King to obtain a special part called the evil element, which only drops upon his death. Shu screams at her for bringing them to a new world without giving them a choice and refuses to help. Visi goes down on one knee, begging them to save her kingdom from destruction. Aya speaks up, expressing that they are just humans who can't do anything. Visi promises that they have abilities they never knew about. Shu still thinks this is a joke, so Visi decides to prove it. She calls forth a prisoner of war and a giant demon dog. She releases the demon dog, which immediately lunges at the prisoner and kills him. Some of the girls are horrified and fall to their knees. Visi looks at the demon, chants a spell, and blasts the monster into flames, erasing it from existence. She then calls the students forward to measure their latent ability. One by one, the students walk up to a crystal ball, which glows in different colors. After the nerds are done, Shu steps up to the crystal. As soon as he places his hand over it, the crystal glows a bright red color. The goddess looks pleased and announces that Shu has a rank skills. Finally, Kiri steps forward. As soon as he places his hand over the crystal ball, it glows a bright golden color before exploding. After that, Aya approaches, and she too is revealed to be S rank. Following her, another girl steps up and also turns out to be S rank. The guards are completely shocked, and Visi explains that having even one S rank individual is extremely lucky, but to have 3 is unreal. Finally, Mimo walks up to the crystal. When he puts his hand over it, the ball glows a dim purple. The goddess doesn't give him a second glance and tells the next person to come up. Mimo tries to ask what rank he is, but she completely ignores him. He walks away, realizing that even in this world, he is destined to be a background character. After that, Yasu, the nerd, steps up to the crystal. He turns out to have a special dark ability, which another dark hero possessed a while ago, and became the strongest. Finally, everyone checks their stats, and the goddess tells them that they also have a personal ability that varies from person to person. She then announces that they have to perform a critical ritual. She calls Mimo to the front, and a guard immediately pushes him forward. She sends him below into a dark pit, claiming that Mimo is E-ranked, the lowest in the entire class. Historically, E-ranked individuals have caused a lot of trouble, so they are usually killed. However, since this time they got so many amazing heroes, she will give the E-ranker a chance to save his life. He will be sent to the abandoned ruins, a dungeon far away where criminals and monsters are sent. She tells him that if he manages to survive, they will leave him alone and he will earn the right to live. Otherwise, he can kiss his life goodbye. Mimo tries to argue, claiming that he can get better, but the goddess replies that he falls into the category of failure frame. This means his stats are so low that even with intense training, he cannot improve. Furious, Mimo tells the goddess that he never chose to come here. He was summoned against his will and now is being disposed of. Kiri cuts him off, saying that he is wasting everyone's time as the girls are already tired. Everyone agrees with Kiri, and Mimo falls to the ground, defeated. When Yasu walks up to him, Mimo remembers the time he helped Yasu after he got bullied. However, Yasu rejects him, telling him that an E-ranker should talk with more respect to their superiors. Mimo loses all hope as the goddess commences the ritual, throwing a leather bag as his special item, which turns out to be completely useless. Aya tries to defend Mimo, saying that this is wrong. Frustrated beyond belief, Mimo raises his arm and uses the paralyze spell on the goddess. She easily blocks it, calling Mimo a loser for even trying to hit her with his E-ranked skills. Kiri also tries a spell, creating a huge fireball, claiming he was just testing it with a small amount of mana. Everyone laughs at the power difference between a loser like Mimo and themselves. Mimo lowers his head as tears fall down his cheeks, remembering how his younger self used to cry. Suddenly, a voice within him tells him to stop pretending to be good and show them his true nature, the side he has been repressing for so long. Finally letting go, Mimo looks up with hate-filled eyes and tells the goddess that she is a rotten hag, warning her to be ready for him if he ever returns alive. He is immediately transported into a dark cave. Trying to open his status, he fails due to the low light. He pours some mana into the leather bag, making the gem inside glow. Using it as a lantern, he moves through the cave, suddenly realizing he is walking on skeletons. Fear grips him as he wonders what could have killed all these people. A monster attacks him, and he barely dodges, running away with all his might. He thinks about turning around to fight but knows the level difference is too great. He would die the moment he stops. Crying out of fear, he trips over a rock and falls. Facing imminent death, frustration over his life takes command of his body. Just as the monster is about to kill him, Mimo makes a last-ditch effort and shoots the paralyze spell, surprisingly petrifying the monster in place. He immediately gets up and runs away, soon reaching the end of the cave where another bird demon approaches with murderous intent. Mimo raises his arm again and uses the paralyze spell, freezing the enemy once more. Realizing his spell works, he starts feeling tired and opens his stats, noticing his mana is almost depleted. He tries casting a poison spell on the monster, which works effectively, causing the demon to turn black and bleed. Sitting on the cave floor, Mimo wonders why his spells are so effective against these demons when he hears something behind him. Turning around, he sees the Minotaur demon has broken free from the spell and is ready to strike. Instead of running away, all the hatred for everyone who treated him badly resurfaces. Even though he is completely exhausted, he raises his arms towards the demon, determined to kill to live his life, and challenges the demon to fight him, uncertain if he will survive this time or not. Tauka sits down to rest and notices that his MP has reached 0. Just then, the Minotaur from earlier catches up to him, indicating that the paralysis effect has worn off. Realizing he's out of MP and unable to defend himself, Tauka reflects that if he were a hero, someone would come to save him. However, as a mere background character, he must rely on his own strength to survive. Despite his dire situation, he doesn't give up and prepares to fight. He recalls that he should still have some natural MP not reflected in his stats. However, he worries about what will happen once he exhausts even that. He sweats bullets thinking about the worst-case scenario. Knowing his natural MP won't last until he reaches the surface, he stops worrying and uses Paralyze on the Minotaur, but it doesn't work. He discovers that he can't use the same skill repeatedly on the same target. He then uses Sleep to make the monster fall asleep and follows up with Poison to kill it. He realizes there must be other limitations to his skills, and using his natural MP makes him very tired. As a horde of monsters approaches, he realizes his odds of survival are slim. But he laughs and prepares to fight them all, using Paralyze on as many as he can. He almost depletes his natural MP. His consciousness begins to fade, but he clings to it, using Paralyze over and over despite the growing number of monsters. Just as he is about to give up hope, he gets a notification that he is leveled up to level 258. This refreshes his MP, allowing him to use Paralyze effectively again. He discovers that the minotaur he poisoned earlier has died, providing him with a huge burst of experience. Reinvigorated, he continues to paralyze the monsters in his sight. His paralyzed skill levels up from repeated use, and he wonders if new skills are obtained by leveling them up. However, he focuses on survival for now. He finds he can now target multiple monsters at once with paralyzed. He smugly thinks that the goddess might be the only one immune to his paralyzed skill, and notes that his skill has a limited range of effect. He uses poison on all the paralyzed monsters, leveling up his poison skill as well. Viewing the monsters as mere experience points, he checks his stats and sees that they have multiplied with each level gain. His MP is the highest due to his high base MP, which he views as his lifeline, as it enables his unique skill. Running out of MP would mean his end. As he rests, the poison monsters die one by one, allowing him to gain more levels until he reaches level 395. He then puts the remaining monsters to sleep to upgrade his sleep skills. After all the monsters die, he reaches level 501. With his enhanced stats, he feels confident about surviving the dungeon. He attempts to kill the remaining monsters, but they flee. He scavenges a robe and other useful items from a nearby corpse, realizing he also needs food and water. Despite searching, he finds nothing. Remembering the monsters he killed, which resembled cows and chickens, he tries to butcher them, but finds their skin too tough. Desperate, he eats one of their eyeballs, but finds it disgusting and can't swallow it. Exhausted and on the brink of despair, he wonders if he will die like this. Noticing the gem on his leather bag turning partly purple, he channels his magic into it, restoring the gem to normal. Suddenly, the bag feels heavier. Inside, he finds a bottle of cola and a packet of jerky. He eats, feeling saved. Unsure if the bag will produce food again, he spends the next few days trying to navigate his way out of the labyrinth. A few days later, Tauka is surrounded by paralyzed and poisoned monsters, waiting for them to die. As they perish, he gains numerous levels, and the scene before him looks like a massacre. Reflecting on his capabilities, he remembers how, as a child, he wanted to kill his parents for mistreating him. However, his uncle and aunt rescued him from that life, providing a normal environment and teaching him kindness and empathy. He thought he had become like them, but now realizes he was deceiving himself. Even witnessing the massacre, he feels nothing, and this frightens him, but he accepts it as his true nature. As the last monsters die, he notices his level has risen to 957. He says a prayer over some human remains he finds, then continues on. He paralyzes and poisons another monster and notices this area is different from the others he has explored. Finding a crystal similar to the one in his bag, he pours magic into it, opening the door to a room where he finds the remains of a couple who appear to have chosen to die together. With no food or water nearby, he deduces their fate. Searching their belongings, he finds some gems, taking them for potential use on the surface. Exploring other rooms, he encounters one requiring an unusually high amount of mana to open. Inside, he finds another body with a fatal wound and a letter identifying the man as Anglin Bathard, known as the Great Sage or Anglin the Hero of Darkness. Recalling the goddess mentioning him, Tauka learns that Anglin was sent here by the goddess after she deemed him no longer useful. Anglin wanted to entrust his gathered items to someone who could escape alive, knowing he would die here. Tauka thinks the goddess, despite labeling the great demon empire as evil, is far worse, and acknowledges his own dark tendencies. He finds a book of forbidden arts among Anglin's belongings, filled with recipes for magic tools and medicines, which he knows will be useful. He also discovers a scroll of forbidden magic, which he cannot read but believes contains powerful spells. This scroll might be his trump card against the goddess if he can decipher it. Before leaving, he notices a blood-written note warning about the Soul Eater, the creature responsible for everyone's deaths here. Continuing his journey through the ruins, Tauka finds a large gate that he believes leads to the surface, requiring a crystal to open. He realizes the Soul Eater likely possesses this crystal and checks his stats before confronting the monster. With his level now at 1229, he hopes his unique skill will work on the Soul Eater. Upon encountering the Soul Eater, identifiable by the crystal on its forehead, Tauka attempts to use Paralyzed. However, the monster shoots a beam, injuring his hand as soon as it detects his skill activation. Bandaging his hand, he deduces the beam activates instantly when someone tries to attack. He realizes the monster has no openings, making it difficult to use his skills. Knowing he needs to speak a skill's name to activate it, Tauka finds the monster isn't giving him enough time to do so. His unique skill range also limits him from targeting it from a safer distance. He considers grinding more levels, but realizes it won't help if he can't use his skills. As the Soul Eater begins to move, Tauka understands why no one has ever escaped the ruins. Defeating this creature might be his only way out. Meanwhile, outside the ruins, a girl runs from her pursuers. Standing in front of the disposal ruins, she considers hiding there to evade them. Back at the ruins, the Soul Eater doesn't attack Tauka despite knowing his location. Instead, it expels gooey, grotesque material from its mouth, which transforms into monstrous forms. Tauka realizes that the Soul Eater is mimicking the faces of humans it has devoured, reflecting their final expressions before death. This display is meant to gauge Tauka's reaction, amusing the Soul Eater with its vile tastes. Suddenly, the Soul Eater smashes through the wall beside Tauka, but he quickly paralyzes the human-like monsters it has created. However, he hesitates to poison them because they resemble humans too closely. He can't bring himself to kill them with his dreadful poison skill, feeling that he hasn't sunk so low as to kill beings that look human. The Soul Eater, enjoying Tauka's inner conflict, produces even more human-like monsters. Desperately, Tauka pleads with them to stay back, fighting to retain his humanity. But the monsters ignore him, swarming from all sides. The Soul Eater revels in his despair, probably thinking it has found the ultimate prey. Tauka continues to beg the human-like monsters to keep their distance, while the Soul Eater enjoys the spectacle. In his desperation, he cries out for someone to save him, but his pleas go unanswered. Then, noticing the Soul Eater's heightened emotion, he seizes the moment and paralyzes it. He reveals that he was waiting for it to let its guard down, and is relieved it never noticed he kept his arm raised, ready to strike. He explains that those who see themselves as superior often lower their guard around the weak, which is their greatest flaw. His paralysis skill then levels up to 3, and he tells the Soul Eater that all his hesitation and fear were merely an act. He confesses that he spent years trying to appear harmless and normal, fooling even himself into forgetting his true nature. With no hesitation, Tauka poisons the human-like monsters, stating he has no reason to hold back just because they resemble humans. He reflects that having the weakest stats in the ruins led the monsters to underestimate him, allowing him to survive. He marvels at how someone sent for disposal could defeat the powerful Soul Eater. The Soul Eater, enraged by Tauka's arrogance, tries to move but is paralyzed. Tauka notices that it receives damage from attempting to move while paralyzed and poisons it. This action levels up his poison skill to 3, and he uses sleep to put the human-like monsters to rest. Eventually, the Soul Eater dies, releasing the souls it has consumed. The freed spirits thank Tauka for saving them, and the Dark Hero urges him to avenge them against the goddess. As they disappear, Tauka reflects that he feels no obligation to fulfill their request, though he does intend to get back at the goddess regardless. He then takes the crystal from the Soul Eater's forehead, uses it to open the gates of the ruins, and finally escapes. This brings an end to our episode 1 and 2. If you enjoyed it, then don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.